Okay, good morning, everyone. Welcome to today's CDBG Office Hours. I'm Mike Phillips, Federal Program Specialist. Also on the webinar, we have Mamie Early, our CDBG Section Chief. From our ICF team, we have Lexi Baru, Ann Schmidt, Lauren Pollock, and Leslie Leaker. If you're unfamiliar with Zoom, you can ask a question to our team. In your user dashboard, there should be a Q&A chat box, and you can click that. You can ask questions anonymously, but we do ask that you leave your name, your region you're associated with. This just helps us better track follow-up and keep questions grouped together. And all questions will be saved and recorded as part of the public record. And with that, I will pass it off to Mamie.
Thank you, Mike. I don't see the next slide on there.
Sorry, here we
go. Thank you for that. Since Felicity is not here, I'm filling in for her. I'll do my best. Request for housing project profiles, leveraging CDBG with home and USD funds. Once again, if you have a housing project, an infrastructure and supportive housing project that combines CDBG and home funding, combines CDBG, USDA, RD funds. If so, we'll like to get your project information so we can elevate it as a success story at the national level. So please contact Janice Waddell to share your project. And her email is listed below, janice.waddell@hcd.ca.gov. And we'll put that again in the chat for you. And I'll go right into the CDBG program updates for the 2022 CDBG NOFA. We had 42 recommended for award. 1 is waiting corrections. 7 are pending final approval. 12 are currently routing, and 22 have been approved. For the 2023 CDBG NOFA, again, the projected NOFA drop date is for September 2023 for the OTC waitlisted projects only, which is approximately about 19 million. For the 2020-24 CDBG NOFA, the projected drop date will be in January 2024, and that will be for competitive and OTC, which is approximately 48 million that we'll have available. And just again, as a reminder, CDBG check-in calls, if there is a scheduling conflict, please reach out to your representative to reschedule prior to the meeting. We do ask that a representative from the city or county be present on all check-in calls, if possible. And another reminder, CDBG program no longer requires the APRs. All reporting is done via eCivis activity reports, financial reports, and the PI receipting and reporting solicitation, and the CDBG closeout reporting. The only exception is the MEBI-WEBI reporting also needs to be collected. So we will have a MEBI-WEBI surveys that will be sent out as a link via the miscellaneous task in eCivis. So grantees will have 30 days from the receipt of the task to complete the survey. We will announce when the survey will be going out during office hours and in the newsletter. And I'll go ahead and take the CDBG CV set-asides. This has been updated as of 8/21/23. So 19 submitted application, 1 rescinded, 2 awaiting corrections, 1 routing, and 15 approved. And you go ahead and take care. Okay, thank you, Michael.
So last week we got some feedback. So currently the CDBG and CV teams are preparing the recap of the office hours questions, and we read the answers out loud throughout office hours. And these answers are provided verbally and are then presented in writing in the newsletter for that week. Sometimes during the recap, clarifications are provided or additional details are solidified. And we said last week that we would do like a quick poll just to see if people are still interested in those. So the question will be, would you like the CDBG team to continue presenting the recaps of the previous office hours? And let me see if I can launch this poll. So, okay, this poll is launched and the answers are anonymous. So feel free to fill that out, give everyone like a minute to do it. And then I can share the results hopefully. All right, 10 more seconds. All righty, I'm going to end the poll. Let's see if I share the result. Hopefully everyone can see that. I'm not sure if it's on the right screen. But it looks like we got 92% saying that they would like to continue with the recap, and then 8% saying that they would no longer like to do the recap. So we'll keep doing that until we'll keep getting feedback on that, and working around with this on that. Okay. And then so with that, let's get into our Q&A recap. So our first question was on triggering Davis-Bacon. The question was regarding the potential triggering of Davis-Bacon in regards to a microenterprise program. Would the purchase of a temporary greenhouse be eligible? This greenhouse would not be permanently affixed, and the assembly of a high tunnel greenhouse requires no tools and is just a frame and polylayers. They must be taken down before the winter gets too intense, and due to snow and wind, it is estimated they will only last 5 years in Siskiyou County. They do not utilize electricity and not heated, and they could feasibly and easily be moved to different locations. And the answer to this would most likely be an acquisition of equipment, and you would not need to hire a contractor to build the units. Rather, they would be assembled by the business owner themselves. So not trigger Davis-Bacon. If installation of these greenhouses would require permitting under your local code, then this could trigger Davis-Bacon. The next question was on CV closeout. The question was, would HCD be willing to go over the CDBG CV closeout process again and remind us where we can find closeout files, like public notice templates for a closeout hearing, forms, etc. And the answer to this was, you can find information in the closeout management memo. For materials from the closeout package or specific questions, please reach out to your GA to go over closeout requirements. For annual CDBG, please reach out to your HCD representative. And I'll post this memo in the chat when we get into our live Q&A. This next question is on the applicability of the 50% rule. The question was, does the spend down of CDBG CV23 grants count towards the 50% rule for the January NOFA? And the answer to that was no. The 50% rule only takes into consideration the annual program. Oops. So it looks like my PowerPoint may stop sharing.
It's back now.
Okay, great.
Whatever you did worked.
Thank you, Ann. Okay. The second question was also on the closeout and the 50% rule. The question was, does closing out a grant count towards the 50% spend down requirement of a category? And the answer was, the 50% rule currently only applies to our competitive programs, which are planning and public services. For currently open planning awards that have not spent down 50%, you will not be able to come in for another planning award. If you have any public services awards that has not spent down 50%, then you cannot come in for another public services award under the upcoming NOFA. The cutoff period is the application deadline. If you are planning to apply with the January 2024 NOFA, the application will be open in February and close in April. So be sure to get spending of your open planning and public services awards underway. This next question was on the OTC and the 50% rule. The question was, does the 50% rule apply to the over-the-counter applications, economic development, and public facilities improvements? We have an active public facilities CV23 grant that has not met the 50% rule as of today, and I'm wondering if that would affect applying for OTC grants in the January 2024 NOFA. And the answer to this was the CBG-CV awards do not count towards the 50% rule, and pursuant to current CDBG program guidelines, over-the-counter applications are not subject to the 50% rule, so you are in the clear if you have a shovel-ready project in 2024. This was another question on the 50% rule applicability. The question was, so the 50% rule no longer applies to ED programs, owner-occupied rehab programs, or home buyer assistance programs. And the answer to this was, that is correct. Based on current program guidelines, over-the-counter applications and awards are not subject to the 50% rule. So the move of ED programs and housing programs from competitive to exempt means that the 50% rule doesn't apply to them. We are contemplating an update to guidelines to encourage timely expenditures, so the applicability of the 50% rule may change at a future date. And this question was on 2020 contract extensions. The question was, any chance that 2020 contracts can be extended a year? And the answer was, unfortunately, no. This next question was on 2018 grants closeout. Question was, we are closing out 3 2018 grants. The contract ends on 9/16/2023. Do all closeout reports need to be submitted in eCivis by that date, or is there time to submit them after that? And the answer was, per the 2018 Standard Agreement boilerplate, the expenditure deadline, all program funds shall be expended no later than 36 months or 3 years from the final department execution date of this agreement, as identified on the SDB 213. All requests for funds must be submitted prior to the expenditure deadline. And the reporting deadline, all activities except activities in support of new housing construction and activities in support of economic development, must report final beneficiaries no later than 30 days after the expiration of the expenditure deadline. Extensions for final reporting must be approved in writing by the department. For additional questions on this, please reach out to your HCD representative so that they can assist you in looking at your standard agreement. Okay, this next question was on OTC grant construction timeline. The question was, for OTC grants, I thought they had to go out to bid in 90 days, not begin construction in 90 days. And the answer was thank you for that correction. At application, all over-the-counter projects must be ready to go out to bid within 90 days of award. This next question was on the 2024 OTC funding sources. The question was, earlier you stated that the 2024 OTC applications must identify all funding sources. Does this mean the sources must be awarded or just identified? For example, if a funding application for a second source is still under review and not yet awarded, will this be acceptable? And the answer to this was, this goes back to the readiness criteria, which requires readiness to go out to bid within 90 days of execution of the standard agreement. That must be demonstrated at the time of application. So if that funding source is not already secured, you are not quote unquote shovel ready unless you are able to phase the project and proceed without extra funding. The simple answer to your question is that you must have the funding source, the funding to complete the project secured at application. This next question is on the 90-day rule. The question was, timing is critical for communities and release of bid dates can impact the pricing. If the 90-day release is a period that would cause cost to be higher, can we work with your team to extend that date to ensure the project receives the best pricing? We'll be ready to bid, but we may not want to bid based on the timing. Is there any grace? And the answer to this was, per conversations with CDBG leadership, as long as the grantee can demonstrate that they are ready to go to bid in 90 days, the timing of going out to bid may be adjusted pursuant to market conditions, assuming that a project can still be completed within 33 months of the award being made. Note, the period of performance is being shortened from 36 to 33 months in the 2023-2024 NOFA cycle to allow adequate time to close out the grants prior to contract expiration. This next question was on code enforcement and housing rehab. Question was, for code enforcement projects, what % of the total funds should be allocated for housing rehab in a $750,000 program? The answer to this was, we are collecting data on this matter currently, so we do not have this number yet. As soon as we have a data-informed relationship, it will be shared prior to January and ultimately included in the January NOFA. There's another question on code enforcement and housing rehab. Question was, can you expand on these new statements that code enforcement must run as part of a housing program? What does HED think this would look like? And the answer to this was, under the regulations for CDBG, the intent of code enforcement is that it run as an effort to mitigate substandard housing issues. We are requiring code enforcement coupled with a housing project. The code enforcement under CDBG is not meant to fund a jurisdiction's entire code enforcement program, but rather be tied to improving the condition of the available housing stock. In 2024 NOFA, you can include code enforcement, housing rehab, and first-time home buyer in a housing program application. This next question was on code enforcement and housing rehab. So regarding code enforcement rehab, oftentimes citations are issued to investor rental homes, and owner-occupied rehab would not be available to those cases. The answer to this was, we are not stating that you need to have an available resource to resolve the situation, but that generally you have a qualified resource like a homeowner. If in your jurisdiction you have an issue of code enforcement where a large percentage of the code enforcement citations are for rental homes, you might want to consider designing your housing rehab program in a way that you can aid investor-owned homes with the requirement that those units have restricted occupancy and are made available to low-income households. Okay, and another question on code enforcement and housing rehab. Question was, it would be interesting to hear from organizations that have code enforcement with a successful housing rehab program, since the housing rehab program requirements is often beyond what homeowners and renters want to complete. And the answer is, that's a great idea. We can invite the jurisdictions that are already doing this to present in a future office hours webinar. Okay, the next question was on the 2024 NOFA standard agreement delivery. The question was, I missed the slide on the estimated delivery of the 2024 NOFA funds or standard agreement. Was it September of 2024? And the answer to this was, HED anticipates routing by November 2024 and executed standard agreements by December of 2024. We are working to streamline the processes, but our goal is to get the standard agreement out sooner rather than later. While it is a January NOFA release, NOFA will be published for 30 days, and then the application window will be open for 60 days. So it's actually 90 days from release when we would close the window for applications to be submitted. Okay, this question is on technical assistance program. The question is regarding the use of CDBG funds for providing TA to to potential business loan applicants, is there a general idea of the budget for loans and TA that we should bear in mind? The answer to this was, we assume that you are posing this question because of our plan for the January 2024 NOFA to fund economic development programs. And that program can include a micro enterprise activity, a small business financial assistance activity, and a technical assistance activity. And that was in response to that community practice meeting we had a few weeks ago. So currently, unless assisting a micro enterprise for which TA can be included in the assistance provided, grantees are having to send potential business assistance clients out to other nonprofits to get the TA, and then have them come back to get the loan when the client is loan ready. This change in our NOFA eligibility should facilitate operating an all-encompassing economic development program, so the grantees can offer TA and then the loan. The intent is to allow businesses to become loan ready under a grantees program, but we are not mandating that the grantee make a loan after providing TA. A grantee could apply for a TA only economic development program if that is the local need. Okay, and our last question, I think, is also on technical assistance programs. The question was, why can't economic development TA be funded under LMC and only under LMA or LMJ? Some jurisdictions aren't LMA. And the answer to this was Matrix Code 18C microenterprise assistance allows for both financial assistance and technical assistance under LMA, LMJ, or LMCMC, which is the National Objective Code for Microenterprise, when the business you are assisting is the beneficiary. If you're providing TA to a business that is not a microenterprise, you cannot use LMCMC because the beneficiary has to be counted in jobs at or as a low-income area where there is no beneficiary to count as LMC or LMCMC. And please refer to the Matrix Code or National Objective at the table for reference. Okay, so that was it for our Q&A recap. So I'll get into our live Q&A. Let's see, our first question is from Murray. Question is, our city is building a regional cultural visitor center for the purpose of economic development and revitalization. The cost is approximately $5 million. I've been told that it needs to be an OTC grant request done in January 2024. Is that correct?
I'll respond to that. Yes, it is correct. The 2023 NOFA is for the waitlisted projects. And then 2024, we will open it up for new applicants for OTC as well as competitive.
Thank you. Okay, our next question is from Brandy. For those who are currently or have finished planning grants for public works, how will the OTC grants be handled if a jurisdiction applies for implementation funds but hasn't been awarded because the application has never been submitted in time based on the first come first served basis, and the jurisdiction is in jeopardy for returning funds because implementation has begun within 5 years of planning?
I think I understand your question. So, Brandy, hopefully with you finishing the planning grant, that you'll pretty much be ready to go when you apply in 2024 for that first come first serve. Unfortunately, it is first come first serve, so we won't treat any applications any different due to them trying to implement a planning grant. So you would just have to, if you don't get in time to meet the cutoff of the funding, then you would need to apply for the next coming NOFA. So that's something that we wouldn't give preference or extra time for the ones that has planning grants for implementation. I think that's what you're asking.
Thank you, ma'am.
Mhm.
Let's see, our next question is from Janet. So I came in late at slide 7. I know the first few are always how do you Zoom? Is this being recorded, and what other slides info did I miss? Hi, Janet. Yeah, this is recorded and everything will be recapped in the office hours newsletter. It'll be sent out on Friday. Let me just look at our slides real quick, see if there's any I can just pull up. I'll just leave this slide up. It's on our no longer requiring APRs. I think that was one of the main slides that we got new information that we wanted to share. Otherwise, everything else should be recapped in the newsletter. Let's see. Our next question is from Paul. So regarding Section 3 qualitative efforts, so the HUD portal for Section 3 is going away, which is where we typically have contractors go and register to ensure we are meeting qualitative efforts. We're struggling to make sure we are meeting the requirements when a contractor states they aren't making any new hires, and we can't have them at least register on this portal now. Any thoughts, any real world examples?
Hey, so I can handle this one. So Paul, what's HUD is closing down the SPEARS system, which was the portal that was used to track Section 3 reporting back when the old rule followed new hires, because the new rule is no longer tied to the number of new hires. That data is no longer relevant in the reporting for Section 3 compliance. What we have to report now is the total number of labor hours and the number of Section 3 worker labor hours and the targeted Section 3 worker labor hours. We also check to see if businesses are Section 3 businesses. And so I would recommend that you check a couple of resources. We did a training in April where we went through sort of all of the new requirements for reporting. And then we also have GMM appendices. So Appendix 5-1 is a Section 3 worker self-certification. And Section 5-2, Appendix 5-2 is a Section 3 business self-certification. And so those are the kinds of forms that you would be having filled out upon procurement to document whether or not your workers are Section 3. We also just recently shared with Mike a tool 5-11 that will be a Section 3 labor hours tracking form just to help at the local level to track hours throughout the project. And then those qualitative efforts that you talked about, the list of those things are really, if you don't meet the benchmarks, you can't just skip over the hours reporting. You have to report total labor hours on a construction project and then the breakdown of Section 3 and targeted. But if you don't meet those 25 and 5% targets, then you would need to do qualitative efforts. And that's just a list of a variety of things that local communities can do to expand and enhance economic opportunities for local low to moderate income workers. And so I would say, look at that list, and then all of Section 3 compliance now is going to be collected at closeout. So part of your closeout packet is going to ask for those total labor hours, your breakdown of Section 3 and targeted, as well as your qualitative efforts. So you really shouldn't need the HUD portal for any of this. I understand that it was a nice place to go for businesses, but now you would just have the businesses fill out those Appendix 5-2 business certifications for that record, that documentation. So there's lots of resources on the HCD website. I can share a screen if we want to go into that, but they've also been linked and provided in the newsletter.
Thank you, Ann. Let's see. Next question is from Murray. So as a beginner, I need to understand OTC versus competitive. can you please help? Also, what is the waitlist process starting in September? Thank you.
Trying to unmute myself here. Okay, so just to answer your question, OTC stands for over the counter. And then competitive, those are, so over the counter is first come, first serve. And then the competitive process is that it's scoring and ranking type of application process. The wait list, just to kind of let you know, we're not doing any future wait list. We had a wait list back in 1920 for the over the counter. And we are trying to complete that waitlisted of those grantees who applied back then. So in 2023, NOFA in September, those are the only applications that we are taking, are those waitlisted projects that was on the wait list since 1920 NOFA. So just to answer your question on what the wait list is, but you will no longer hear that terminology moving forward because we will no longer do the wait list anymore for the over-the-counter applicants. We will just do first come, first serve. Once the money has ran out and is not available, then you will have to reapply if you do not make the cut of the funding available. And what was the other question? I think I answered everything.
Yeah. Thank you, Mimi. So your next question is from William. Is there a maximum amount for OTC application submission and grant amounts? This is for the 2024 NOFA in January.
Yes, I think we're going to still use the same limits that we are rolling out in 2023, which the max is 3.5, but we are going to have a listening session sometime in October. So we will solicit, feedback like we did before. So most definitely, we were still trying to possibly keep the same limits. It's most likely we are, but we will have listening sessions in October to kind of get your feedback for the January 2024 NOFA.
Okay, let's see. Our next question is from Brandy. So in follow-up, in the 5th year of application for implementation for OTC, and the jurisdiction still hasn't submitted on time for the funding in first come, first serve, the jurisdiction will have to refund the planning grant?
Well, that is the requirement of accepting a planning grant if it's going to be for a future project. So that's something that needs to be worked out internally at the city and county level to make sure that they are submitting those applications of, to implement their planning activity. I don't know if Anne, if you have any words of wisdom on submitting applications for that 5-year period of once they get a planning grant, they have to implement that planning activity within that 5-year period. I think that's their concern.
Yeah, we've been working with HCD on just making sure that that reporting is done properly so that you can, so that it's set up correctly in the reporting to HUD, because certain types of planning at the state level do require the action to then take place. So
yeah,
I'm sorry, I don't really know what the question is, but I think we're certainly working with HCD on making sure that the guidance is really clear for the expectation of what's expected once you've received a planning grant.
Yeah, and also just a reminder as well, CDBG funds is normally gap funding. So still try to find other funding sources to be able to help you meet that goal, that national objective of that planning grant. So just kind of keep that in mind, because there may be situations that we won't be able to fund the whole entire activity due to your scope of work. So we want you to kind of be proactive to see if there's any other funding sources available for that project. So you'll be able to have all the fundings that you need to complete that project. So just
Yeah, and we can
yeah.
maybe jump down. Lori has a follow-up question that says implementing a project was never a requirement. This is new. And I think I would just say that we're working closely with HCD and HUD to make sure that it really comes down to how the state is able to make planning awards to local jurisdictions. There is a difference between state CDBG and entitlement CDBG. And so just making sure that we're compliant with the eligible activities and the required input into HUD's database and meeting and reporting national objectives that way. So it may not be the same way it was done previously, but we're making efforts to ensure compliance with the state CDBG program.
Thank you, Anne, for that. So
let's see. Next question is from Brandy. So follow up on Paul's question. So rural small community contractors do not have Section 3 workers, as they are working on prevailing wage jobs. Therefore, they all need to do qualitative efforts.
Yep, and then Paul also clarifies that it's under the new rules, it's just getting difficult. So I think what I would do, and I'm noticing, I'm not sure, I'm just gonna share screen quickly if you don't mind. I think I have the ability. Oh.
Yeah, you should.
Yeah, okay. So I am going to share a page that it's included in the training and it's part of the closeout packet right now. I think what we probably need to do is pull this out as a separate tool for the GMM, because qualitative efforts are something that you should be working on ongoing so that you don't scramble at the end to be able to complete your closeout packet. And I didn't see that. It might be in the works, but this is something we developed last summer. And just for clarification, so we have the Section 3 workers, the total number of hours, the benchmarks that you need to make. And if you don't meet those, it's actually the grantee, the recipient of the CDBG funds that needs to certify that at least one qualitative effort has been made. So this does not have to be on a per construction contractor or subcontractor basis. And frankly, it does not have to be solely the responsibility of the general contractor. These actions can be taken at the municipal level or through an entity coordinating with the municipality. And so, or the jurisdiction. And so I just want to be clear that, there's not a specific requirement that only the contractor can do these things. So if the contractor is not hiring, they certainly don't want to offer a job fair because they're not hiring. But if the community, and I understand that rural community, this is a very difficult rule to comply with in rural communities. And I would just say, find the thing in this list that best serves the needs of your communities. And you may find that your community is already doing something in here that you can count. So, assist residents with finding childcare or applying for vocational and technical training. So these are things that you can do at the community level, and then you check the box, and it's the jurisdiction that affirms the qualitative effort, not necessarily the contractor. So I hope that answered Paul and Brandy's question, but I'm happy to chat offline further about Section 3. And I will stop sharing.
Thank you, Anne. Here, our next question is from Murray. Our project is a combination of economic development and revitalization, but also a portion of simply moving city offices. Can we not turn to CDBG for the latter?
So costs associated with the general operations of business are prohibited from reimbursement by CDBG funding. And so I believe that the relocation of city offices would be the general operations of business. I don't know, Leslie, do you agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, and I don't know enough about the inner workings of the way HCD moves their money down. Do they get administrative funds, or is it all through activity delivery? Is that how? cities are.
It's a combination of GA and activity delivery, if that's what you're asking, Leslie.
Yeah, so, you know, we can't really do anything. We can't acquire, we can't rehab city offices, but moving expenses, if they could go under kind of a general admin line item, could possibly be eligible. But I would say it's probably a best practice not to, because that would be, you could be blurring the lines and accidentally kind of step over. So I would say it's a best practice not to do that. However, if that was something that was really necessary, and that would just be the moving, not rehabbing, not doing anything, like not buying equipment, because we know that's not appropriate, or office furniture, but you could go ahead and write into HCD to get you know, kind of a better description, and they could really understand what your true question is.
Thanks, Leslie.
Thank you, Liz. See, our next comment is from Lori. That I think this is in regards to the planning grants, that implementing a project was never a requirement, and this is new.
And I think Anne kind of touched on that. I think ICF has been working with us to be able to be more in compliance with HUD requirements. So that's why it's now just coming up, because that's something that we was never following up on in the past. But we learned that that's something that we need to have on our radar and make sure that we're in compliance. So this is why the conversation is presenting itself now.
Thank you, Mimi. So our next question is from Paul. Yes, sorry, Anna, I might not have wrote that correct. I'm aware of all the new requirements and reporting. Can you possibly unmute me so I can elaborate? This topic gets difficult for long-winded items. I'm not quite sure if that works in Zoom, Paul, but let me try. Let's see.
Can you hear me, Mike?
Yeah, I can hear you.
How about that? It worked. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll try to keep this short. And thank you, Anne, for the response. I'm just going to elaborate a little bit. So I think the point that you just made on this could possibly be the grantees and not the contractors is kind of a key item. So when we get a contract, let's just say it's for a sewer line. There's no contractor that's probably going to do any of those check boxes, especially if they're not going to hire anybody. So we have contractors, right? So we put it all in the bid. There's Section 3 requirements. We encourage it. I'm just trying to give you a real world example, right?
Yep.
They respond, they say, oh yeah, no, we made our efforts, but we don't have any Section 3 and we're not hiring. So we're not gonna have any hours. So then it comes back to the city. So then I guess the expectation is, okay, you know, what is this city doing then to meet that effort? So you say job fair, resume building, but it's not for that job, right? So it's just a general one then that's focusing on those workers that meet that Section 3 requirement.
Yep. It's just expanding opportunity, economic opportunity for low-income persons, workers.
And even something like the example you gave of childcare services, and you said this might be something they've already done. So that could be literally as simple as there's some sort of list database that they share with residents on where they could utilize childcare services for those that need childcare when they're working. I mean, some of these examples are just, I'd just be surprised if HUD says, oh yeah, you have a childcare flyer, you check the box on qualitative efforts for Section 3.
I think you have to do your best. I think if you're going to do that level of outreach, I think I would say like, hey, we're doing this sewer line project that triggers compliance with Section 3. As a result of not meeting, our benchmarks, we're doing the qualitative effort to assist folks in finding daycare during work. Here are resources available. I think you just have to, I would do what you can to tie it back to the project so that if it were to be audited or monitored, it's clear.
Okay.
But do your best. I agree that this new rule is a struggle for rural communities. Like there's no question. And I think we just need to do our best to try to meet it. And when the numbers come in, HUD will start to see that. I do want to say though, when your contractors are saying we're not hiring anybody and there's no Section 3 hours, you still have to have those worker certifications and those hours. So even if it is 0 for Section 3 and targeted Section 3, you have to be able to identify the worker's address and confirm that they are not, within the target area. So there is still more paperwork. It's not like the old days where contractors could just say, I'm not hiring 0, 0, 0. Like that can't comply anymore.
Okay. No, I appreciate the answer. Thanks, Mike.
Now you're going to be a presenter next time, so get ready.
Thanks, Paul. Okay, let's see. Our next question is from William. The question is there an ETA in Chapter 6 and Chapter 10 of the HCD Grants Management Manual? Also, are the tools and dependencies up to date?
Great question, William. So I just met with our team this morning, and Chapter 10 is heading over to Mike this week. So that will go then through the state's 508 accessibility compliance and be posted shortly. Mike and Felicity met with our team last week on some 6 final, or no, it's not 6, I'm sorry, it's E for housing that's in final detail. 6 is sort of next on the list. So we should have 10 out very shortly, E right after that, and then 6 just in a couple of weeks. So those are, I'd say within a month from now should be up. And then tools are up to date. We try to make corrections and up to date as possible. I will say we're continuing to add tools as we finalize them. If you notice things that are posted in, that have errors or contradict something we've said in office hours, please elevate that up to Mike and Felicity, and we can make changes while ICF is still on board.
Thank you, man. Let's see, our next question is from Brandy. For guest comment, I think that the issue is that the OTC funding is going within minutes when the application period opens. It could be impossible to get funding based on the first come, first serve.
Thank you, Brandy, for that comment. We are taking that in consideration, Brandy. So we are working on seeing if we can be able to share, since the application is not going to be open for you guys to be able to review. We are leaning towards possibly being able to share at least the questions that's going to be asked of the application, so you can kind of have an idea and kind of prepare. So that's why we kind of stress for any of the cities and counties who's interested in applying to be on our email list, to come to our office hours, really be engaged with your representative, because if you're not in the know, then you will kind of be missing out on those tools and those resources that we'll provide prior to the application. So that's our goal. That's something that we are working on, is to be able to see if we can, at least, since we can't open the application sooner than the drop date, at least we can share at least what the questions is going to look like, so you can be better prepared. Unfortunately, the over-the-counter is it is a first come, first serve. So I have no wiggle room of how that goes, but we will try to provide resources and have also have the resolution template for the NOFA year 23-24 available ahead of time. So that's something that we are working hard on right now digitally. So hopefully it will help with that first come, first serve.
Thank you, Mamie.
Mm-hmm.
And then let's see, our last question in the queue is from Murray. So please provide general advice in the coming 4 months. For example, working with our regional CDBG representative for being ready for applying for my new project at January. For example, new running shoes on the starting line.
I think maybe that means maybe you are hosting a NOFA workshop, right? Mamie might be frozen on.
Yeah, so in October, we'll be holding that listening session. That might be your best bet is to attend the October listening session, and we'll when we get that scheduled, we'll kind of notify everyone, send out emails, and if you're registered for office hours, you should be receiving like the newsletter and the recap. It's every Friday after office hours, so we'll make sure that everyone gets the registration link for the and plenty of notice for that. That'll probably be your first best step. And then, yeah, contacting the rep that's that represents your area. Let me see if I can pull up the rep map, and then you can find your rep if you don't know who they are already. Okay, I'm gonna post this into the chat. Absolutely, those are probably your best kind of first steps to get started, and then yeah, we'll make sure to give everyone plenty of notice when the NOFA's dropping and everything like that. But yeah. Great. Thank you, Jeff. Looks like all the questions that we have in the queue for now. So I should go ahead and give everyone another minute to get any last minute questions.
Sorry, I lost connection, you guys.
No worries.
Did Marie's question get answered while I was not connected?
Yes. Yeah. We just advised to make
Okay.
sure to attend the October listening session and connect with their rep if they have any questions. And
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
great. And that looks like all of the questions that we have in the queue for today. So just go ahead and close out for today. Thank you everyone for your questions and engagement. Really appreciate it. And keep an eye out for the newsletter on Friday. And as always, if you don't receive those emails, just go ahead and send me an email. I'll put my email in the chat right now, just to make sure you get the newsletters. With that, hope you all have a good rest of your day, good rest of your week, and we'll see you back in 2 weeks. Our next office hours will be on September 6th, it looks like. Already September, can't believe it. All right. Thank you, everyone.